welcome to the Women on the Wall radio show. We are excited to be with you today, and my co-host, who's normally here, Rebecca Forrest, is not with us this morning. She's actually in Austin working on a great project that I'll be talking about a little bit later on in the show. But I wanted to welcome my, I guess, co-host for the day, or guest for the day, Marla. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
And Marla is a mom, a Texas mom, who's running for your local town council in Argyle, Texas, which is actually where I live. So, and it's Marla Hawkesworth. I said your name last night on our radio, or on the conference call, and I didn't say it correctly. So, Marla Hawkesworth.
That's right.
That's right. And so, there's great things happening in the world today. You know, there's so much negative that we hear, and things can be overwhelming, but there's great things happening too, because moms and dads are waking up and stepping up. And our good friend John and Dana hosted a fundraiser for Women on the Wall, and we had this big banner, and it said, "Seek the truth, share the truth, and stand for the truth." And at that time, we were exposing C-Scope in Arlington too, in Argyle, and across Texas. And we have been successful. I know our local school board in Argyle, once they were made aware of the issue, did the right thing and unfunded it. Mm-hmm. And really, that's the message. There's so much information coming at us that's affecting our children and our grandchildren, and we need to educate ourselves, and then when we find out about things that aren't good for them, we need to step up and say no. And so Marla is running for her local town council, and then Craig, your husband, is actually running for school board.
Yes, he is.
As well.
Yep.
Well, we're going to get back to that,
okay.
But I want to start out the show because there is this big issue. We were fighting C-Scope, but there's a bigger issue of Common Core. And the Common Core is a set of national standards, but it's much bigger than that. Yep. It truly is a philosophy of education. And we're going to start by playing a video. We had a education summit in Houston at the King Street Patriots location, and our friend Mary Bowen spoke. And I want you to hear what she has to say, because she pretty much lays out what Common Core is in a nutshell. So Josh, our producer, let's go.
There was a document called the 2020 Vision, the Education Roadmap. And the most important thing about this document is that it was spelled out very clearly that the goal was to essentially do away with the elected school boards in local districts. Linda Darling-Hammond, who you heard Alice talk about, and Bill Ayers are very good friends. Bill Ayers is, of course, a radical. These are some of his quotes. "Kill the rich people. Bring the revolution home. Kill your parents. Teaching urges revolutions, small and large. Education is the motor force of revolution." And if this isn't startling and dramatic, this is where these people's heads are at, folks. They see the schools as a tool to fundamentally transform society. And they desire that children leaving the schools don't identify themselves as living in a particular town. In other words, they're not from Katy, Texas. They don't identify, they're not a Boy Scout or a Catholic. They're a global citizen. When Common Core and its evil twin sister C-Scope came into the Texas schools, the Texas Education Agency published a document telling you what they were doing. And they said that if there is a curriculum that is common, and you can call that Common Core if you want to, that if that is put in with unconditional delivery. That means people don't have a choice anymore. That this is the only way to ensure educational equity amongst students. And so what this is doing is it's driving a factory model of our educational system where all the children come in and they get on this sort of conveyor belt. And when they pop off the other side of the conveyor belt, they're all equal. There's only one big problem with this business model of education is it's un-American. Because here in this country, when you go to school, it's a door of opportunity. You can walk through the door and you can take the opportunity. You can make a success of yourself. But we're supposed to have freedom. And we can't have freedom without free will. And part of free will is I walk through the door and I don't pick up the opportunity. I choose either to fail or I choose a road of success that looks different than what you might design for me. Because in this country, we forge our own path. So how can somebody make decisions for me before I even arrive at the school about what success is going to look like for me and when I pop out the other side of the conveyor belt?
The Governors Association is a nonprofit organization out of Washington, D.C. It's not state-led. And then you look at Texas and you look at the strategies and tactics of how C-Scope was put into 875 districts across our state, and they said it was district-led. And isn't it interesting, because the copyright to C-Scope is owned by the 20 education service centers whose directors formed a nonprofit organization that owns the copyright. And because of the hard work of a lot of the people in this room, C-Scope has had to rebrand itself. And it's no longer called C-Scope, it's Teaks Resource Services. So looking back, and we think about the green, yellow, and red people, and we look at Texas, who, you know, in Texas, we passed a law, HB 462, that says we don't have Common Core in Texas. We said no to Common Core. We don't have those national standards. Well, from all of the talks that you've heard today, Common Core is not about a set of national standards. Common Core is about a philosophy of education. C-Scope, or Teaks Resource Services, or whatever you want to call it, is about a philosophy of education of Linda Darling Hammond. Social emotional learning, a dumbing down of our system, equalizing America in the world. So when you look at Texas, and you look at the illusions that have been created to say that we don't have Common Core in Texas. We passed a law, so our elected officials can say we are against Common Core. But that HB 462 just says that the Common Core national standards can't be mandated on our district.
So, Common Core, I hate to tell folks, is in Texas. And it's in Texas in a big way because we're under this illusion that it's not here. Because our legislators passed a law, HB 462, that says we don't have Common Core in Texas. But Common Core is not about a set of national standards, just like I said in that video. It is about a philosophy of education. It's about looking at the world not through the lens of knowledge-based reading, writing, and math, but through this subjective lens, and ideas can come and go. But good ideas have good consequences, and bad ideas have bad consequences. And what is happening across the country is the consequences of this Common Core philosophy of education, which they say is more rigorous, is having very dangerous effects on our children because they're not developmentally ready and prepared to handle all of this. We're treating them like they're little adults, and they're not ready.
Right.
And we're providing an environment where teachers and schools are forced to use a curriculum or curriculum products that are aligned with this Common Core philosophy, because those are the only products out there that are available, they think. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk a little, I have another audio that we're going to play, and as you saw in that video, we have a Wednesday night conference call where we have experts call in. We have everyday moms and dads call in and tell us their experiences. Last night we had a dad from Frisco ISD, or actually Plano ISD. He lives in Frisco, that gave us a report of going into his daughter's school and saying, "Can I see?" And so on our call, we had Meg Norris out of Georgia. She's a teacher that wrote an incredible letter to her students as to why she had to leave teaching, because she was forced to use this Common Core philosophy in the classroom, this curriculum, and she knew that it was harming her children and that if she spoke out, she would be fired. So she said, "I'm leaving." And she wrote an incredible letter to her students and telling them why. So I want to play the audio from our conference call, and I think what you're going to hear is going to open your eyes. And actually, Josh, I'm supposed to do this. Let's see here.
Meg is a teacher who, after having to live under the Common Core, and Donna, I want you to repeat what you said, and then I want to get Meg's take on that from her perspective of someone who actually had to teach the Common Core.
Yes, Meg, I'm a fellow teacher. I taught for 33 years. And in Texas, we actually had an earlier version of Common Core when our standards were thrust through the State Board of Education ruthlessly. Back in 1997, and I was on the writing team for English Language Arts Reading and was fighting it all the way, trying to move us, keep us into what we call Type 1, or the traditional skills that we all believe are important to learn, and not off into the social justice agenda. And I was fighting it back then, lost that battle. Anyway, I finally left the public schools much before I was ready to. I had only taught 27 years. I'd stayed home with their children for about 12 years. And so I was not ready for retirement because I didn't have, enough retirement money, et cetera, et cetera. But I went ahead and left the classroom for the very reason you did, because I had been told that I could not teach the grammar, the usage, the expository writing, all those important classic pieces of literature that I had been teaching for so many years. And when I saw that, I could not stay. So I read your letter. I didn't know you had written it at the time. It was anonymous when I received it some weeks ago, but my heart went out to you and what you were trying to tell your students. Because, and what Alice wants me to repeat is that I know from having taught for so many years that when I set up an impossible task in my classroom, then I could expect my students either to cheat or to have terrible psychological problems that surfaced. I mean, that is the way students respond. It's going to be one or the other. And when that ever happened to me, I realized that my tests were not fair, or that I had not taught the material thoroughly enough. In other words, it was my problem. It was my fault that my students were responding that way. With the Common Core, it's not the teacher's fault. It is not the student's fault that they are responding the way they are with these tremendous problems that Mary has been describing, these psychological, emotional problems. It is because the Common Core is setting up impossibilities for teachers and for students. And it is so devastating. It's bigger than anything we've ever seen in education before. It's just wrong.
I agree 100%, and that's exactly what I saw. And I taught inclusion classes, so I had usually a third of my class had some kind of disability, or could have been a new language learner. Most of them were special ed students, and that's where my heart was. And I am working right now on my doctorate in special education, focusing on how the brain learns. And I could tell, just really from basic child development, basic Piaget, basic Vygotsky, that you study in early classes when you go into teaching. I could tell what I was asking my students to do, and I have my specialist degrees in mind, brain, and education, and I could tell that what I was asking them to do, their brains weren't going to do. I was asking them to think on conceptual levels and on abstract levels that they weren't going to be able to get yet, because I knew their brains weren't at a developmental stage to be able to handle that. So I spent 18 months, and while I was working, I was also researching, and I was learning, and I was trying to figure out all the different ways, because I didn't want to walk away and have people say, "Oh, well, she just gave up." I tried everything, every known method of pedagogy that I could come up with to reshape these standards, to try and simplify them for all levels. Because what's happening in schools right now is your gifted kids are being put into regular ed classrooms with special ed students in the hopes that those gifted students will be paired with low-performing students and bring those low-performing students up. Because when these schools start the formula to figure out what their new scores are going to be, bringing special ed students' scores up counts more than having a student in a gifted class. So rather than expand gifted learning and gifted teaching, which is what we should be doing, we are taking our gifted children and bringing them into classrooms and forcing them really to be teachers. So I had everything from gifted kids who I'm also gifted certified, so I was trying to challenge my gifted kids. I refused to use them as peer tutors, and also keep my lower special ed kids with all of their accommodations challenged and not giving up. And what I was seeing was kids were not coming to school. They were coming to school and getting sick. They were spending an extraordinary amount of time in the nurse's office. I had kids coming in that were cutting themselves. I had the pencil stabbers. I had kids who had bald spots in their heads where they had pulled their hair out. And no matter what I did, no matter how many times I tried, these standards are not going to work, especially for your K through 8 kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an impossibility. And, that's what is driving this thing, is the fact that, and it's driving parents crazy. And they're seeing it. New York State you're way ahead because you've been implementing the Common Core curriculum this year. In fact, I guess you started some last year. And I've been watching all this coming out of New York. And, these parents are just, no wonder they're willing to go out and stand in that horrible weather. And I was so impressed, Mary, with what
I'm actually down. I'm actually down in Georgia. I'm down in Georgia, and we of course have no unions or anything like that. So the teachers down here are so bullied right now. We will never know what works because the teachers are not allowed to speak against anything. So you have teachers who literally have tape over their mouths, who are not permitted to say a word. and it's setting these kids up to fail.
Even with
you didn't hear you probably didn't hear a while ago what Mary was telling. She was telling about the fact that in New York today, or yesterday, I guess it was it today or yesterday, Alice? When they had the protest,
Monday.
they went.
That was on Monday, yeah.
Monday, yeah.
And they actually went out in this terrible weather and the snow and so forth and stood there to protest in front of the TV stations just to get their attention about Common Core. But that shows you the depth of frustration that parents are feeling when they watch their children suffering, just as you're describing. It really is child abuse, y'all. It is really.
And the thing to remember, too, the companies behind this, the companies that David Coleman works for, the companies that are paying off the politicians right now, these companies are making so much money. Pearson Education owns 90% of the publishing for education now. Textbooks, curriculum, all of that now comes out of Pearson. Guess who had people on the committee writing the standards? Pearson. So there is such a corporate drive. So then Pearson turned around and said, oh, well, you know what? The parents are going to be frustrated too, so let's go and let's fill the bookshelves at Barnes & Noble with help books so that when the parents can't understand why their children are struggling, they're going to rush out to try and find a book to help them help their kids.
Which is also
the parents are being fleeced.
Get them both ways. Let's get the money both ways.
That's right. The parents are being fleeced. The teachers are doing the same thing. The teachers are being fleeced. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. And until we shut down Pearson and get control of our textbooks back, get control of our curriculum back, Pearson's not even an American company. They're based in the UK. Who are these people?
We're trying really hard, by the way. Right now in Texas, we are passing the word, and I want to say it right now for everybody on this phone call who's in Texas or even in other states. Pearson's biology book, we want to blackball it. And it is coming up before the State Board of Education for a final vote in January the 25th through the 26th, somewhere in there. Our state board is meeting, and they're going to be adopting in the final second reading the list of textbooks that have gone through the process. And Pearson has refused to follow the TEKS, the standards that were adopted in Texas by the State Board of Education. And because they're refusing, they think they can just strong-arm the schools in Texas and that the administrators will go ahead and purchase Pearson even though they're not aligning the way they're supposed to with the true intent of the TEKS. So we're passing the word to the local people. The local people need to go to their school boards. They need to go to their administration and say, we do not want our taxpayers' dollars, not one penny, going to purchase a Pearson biology book.
Well, here's the problem, though. Pearson also owns Prentice Hall. Pearson also owns Harcourt. Pearson also owns McGrawHill. So there's not a whole lot left. They own all of them.
Well, McGrawHill actually has the best biology book that's coming out in Texas. It's a different situation, Meg, here, because in Texas we do have really good, strong what we call Type 1 or traditional standards in ELAR, science, social studies, and math. And textbooks have to go ahead and follow our curriculum standards if they go through the State Board of Education textbook adoption process, which is what we're doing right now. But the problem is that we also had a piece of legislation called Senate Bill 6, which was pushed through by Thomas Ratliff, who's on the State Board of Education, who is a registered lobbyist for Microsoft. Microsoft and Pearson are working hand in glove, as we all know. And if the Senate Bill 6 then allows school districts to adopt instructional materials that have not been approved by the State Board of Education. So I'm saying this not just, I'm explaining to you, but I want the radio audience to understand that we as locals, they're using, the local school districts still make the decision as to what instructional materials they're going to purchase using our tax dollars. We're taxpayers, so we have the right and the obligation to go to our local school districts and express ourselves strongly and say, don't you dare spend our tax dollars on any of these Pearson biology textbooks. You know, we're trying to get the word out as we can and blackball Pearson, you know, at least their biology books. It just, you know, we understand what you're saying, Meg. It's
yeah. And the other thing,
we can't fight the whole world, but if we can fight and see a lot of, you know, as you probably know,
so huge.
Because it's so huge. But our textbook, Texas is the largest buyer of textbooks in the whole United States.
Sure.
So what happens is that most of the states, because we have a very elaborate textbook adoption process. I call it textbooks. They're using the term now, instructional materials, IMs, instead of textbooks. But I'm using the old-timey word textbooks so everybody will understand. But anyway, we have a very elaborate process here. And what a lot of states do, we go through the book so carefully, page by page, word by word. We have wonderful evaluators that are housed right here in Texas. Educational Research Analyst is the best organization in the whole United States to go through these textbooks. And they go to these public hearings and they point out all the factual errors and all the biased statements and so forth and so on. And a lot of those are taken out of our textbooks. Well, then after we go through and clean them up, so to speak, and we charge the textbook publishers, Pearson included, money for every mistake they leave in the textbooks. So because of that process, then a lot of other states set their adoption process a year or 2 years after Texas's, because they want us to clean up the books. So what we're doing in Texas can have a great influence on other states, yours included.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
And that is why it is so imperative for us to follow what Mary's doing, follow what Meg is doing and what she has experienced, because if we don't, Texas is, and Meryl, you can attest to this, Texas is the last stand. That's why this issue is so important in Texas, is because if we don't stand for our Texas standards, which are that are your traditional foundational standards, Ratliff and Company, they are working very hard to make our State Board of Education obsolete, and that this whole review process that Donna is talking about moot, because they want for the districts, school districts, to go directly to and not go through this review process. And what we see in Fed-Led Ed, if you will, it's not just about the Common Core standards. It's about the fact that all of these curriculum products, and that goes exactly into what you're saying, Meg, they are making so much money off of our children and their teachers that if we don't stand for this review process, if we don't stand for our standards here in Texas and be an example for the rest of the states, for these states that have adopted these Common Cores, there's no going back. If we let it go in Texas, that's it.
Well, and sadly, a lot of people think that this is just one of those educational waves, and it's going to come through, and then we're going to change to something else. What people don't understand is if this stays, and Common Core or C-Scope or whatever is in place in the fall of next year, we're stuck with it.
Meg, you are so right.
Pretty eye-opening, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. Hey, Rick Rose, the great thing about having a show, a grassroots show, is you have these live studio audience. And Rick Rose is one of the founders of WBTM Radio. That stands for We Become the Media. Because when you find out about things like what we just heard, and the mainstream media won't cover it, it's got to be us. It really does have to be us. And, you know, when you look at the strategies and tactics of how Common Core was put into 45 states, how C-Scope was put into 875 districts across the state of Texas, including our school district.
Right.
It took parents speaking up and saying no and educating and talking about issues and finding out the truth. And what we also know is that the other side that has this agenda is so much further ahead of us in implementing their strategies and their tactics. And one of the things that they're doing, they announced that the National PTA Association is going to be having their national convention in Texas, in Austin, Texas, in June. Remember, Texas said no to Common Core.
Right.
Texas is supposed to be the one state that you can come to where you can, it's a strong conservative state. Well, they're coming in through the back door. And one of the things that they're using are PTA moms, because they're sending them to Austin. A lot of that is paid with Title I funds, our tax dollars, to go to Austin, and they're going to hear sessions all about equity in education, social emotional learning. And I have to read this one part for you, because I think that as we're talking about in our own community in Argyle, where we have a bond package that's being put through, a big part of that is technology. And what they're going to be training these moms and dads with the PTA is all about breaking new ground data systems, transform family engagement in education. Basically, the Harvard Family Research wrote a document for the PTA that, in a nutshell, helps bring mom and dad on board with the value of data collection of their children's personal information. And so when we pay dues locally to our local PTA, a portion of that due goes to PTA National. So our dues are actually paying for this conference. For moms and dads to go to a conference where it's like in the industry, you go to a conference and it's fun and they make it, exciting, and you're indoctrinated and you take this back to your community. So as a mom, Marla, hearing what we heard, because this is the first time that you've heard this, what is that gut feeling inside?
It's terrifying. It's almost so much information. As an individual, I can see where moms feel like it's overload, and what can I do? What can my one voice do in a situation that's grown so big? But then we have people like you, who you are on the front lines, and it's one voice at a time. It's people coming together as a group. It's educating yourself on what is it my child's learning when they're away from me for 7 to 8 hours a day. And, hearing the lady, I think out of Georgia, who talked about, if your child happens to be really intelligent and really excelling, and suddenly now they're a peer tutor for other children, and it brings everybody down to this level playing field. That's not a good thing.
No.
You have to have people, within society who excel, who want to excel. That's our next leaders for the next generations to come.
Right. Well, and what's interesting is you don't see Jeb Bush's kids going to a Common Core school. You don't see Obama's kids going to a Common Core school. What they're doing is setting up a two-tier system where they control who the leaders are. And our children who are in public school, and even this is in public, private, and charter. They're all, because as we heard, all of the curriculum products that are out there,
90%.
90%. Our school districts don't have a choice. Actually, they do have a choice. They have a choice because they have a locally elected school board who can, one, demand that any instructional materials or textbooks that are purchased by the school district have gone through that review process by the State Board of Education. And that's one thing that we'll be trying to pressure at the state level during the next legislative session, that this Senate Bill 6 that opened the door for online instructional material, that we stop that we fix that legislation. But you and I, our kids, they're in school now. Our kids don't have time. We don't have time to wait for the elected officials to fix it. We have to fix it ourselves. And I want to, you're running for local town council. And I think it's very important for people to understand that the economy of a community, in large part, is dependent on the school system that is there.
That's right.
And you think about it, Argyle, we won state in football. We won, did we win state in?
We just took second in state in golf.
Literally
this past week. So,
I
mean,
we're doing great things in our little community, and we don't have the big, huge stadium. We just have, we have a great little community, and people are coming into Argyle because of the sports. They're also coming in because of the education. And I think that it is going to be, in the future, a marketing tool for communities that have smart growth within the community, and that if you don't have a Common Core school, if you have an engaged community where parents are working with school board and teachers and administrators and working together to find curriculum products that are piloted and proven successful, like Saxon Math. We've had Dr. Stan Hartzler in studio with us, who he quit teaching like Meg Norris because he was forced to use C-scope math. And he said he cannot, in good conscience, give these kids the illusion that they're learning math when he knows that they're not. And the reason why he knew was because he was part of the developing team back 30 years ago that developed Saxon Math and piloted the program. There are great English language arts. They may be in old textbooks, or they may be veteran teachers that know how to teach that. But I think that a local community that can take control and not allow this system that's been set up in education, where basically the school board looks to the superintendent to tell them exactly what they're going to put into the school district, and that superintendent and those principals are going to professional development through these associations in our 20 education service centers that are feeding them all this Common Core stuff.
Well, and then it takes, they alluded to the fact that their children become conveyor belt children. Well, guess what? As a parent, that's the question you ask yourself. Am I going to become a conveyor belt parent? Am I going to step onto the belt, or am I going to step off?
Very good.
And the nice thing about our small towns, and they're all over Texas, is, man, that's the place to have a voice and be heard. And your neighbors with your superintendent, your neighbors with your school board. You know these people on a first name basis.
Right.
There's not a ton of red tape to get to them. They want you to call. It's an open door policy for small towns.
You're exactly right. And I have to give credit to our superintendent in that when I have gone in and raised the red flags about C-scope, from our superintendent to the principals, we held a community meeting. We brought in Dr. Stan Hartzler. We had these people come in and speak, and our school board did the right thing. They voted to unfund C-scope. We had another situation where it came to my attention that Argyle had joined a 14-district consortium to apply for a federal Race to the Top grant. And if they had won that grant, in taking that federal dollars, there's always strings.
That's right.
We would have been aligned with smarter balance assessments. That's the Common Core. So you have to understand the strategies and the tactics of how they're trying to get it in. And if we have a school board that understands the big picture, if we have a town council that understands the big picture and is working hand in hand with the local school board, we can fortify our little community.
That's right.
And market it in a great way. We will be graduating students who are at all levels, are truly college and career ready. If they choose to go to college, they're not going to be taking remediation classes because they haven't learned the Common Core math. They've actually learned sound math. So I want to talk a little bit about your race. And you've been out block walking.
Yes, I have. There's nothing fast about that.
No, there's not. They're not. And like you said, in our local community, you can have a voice pretty quickly.
Right.
We don't have a real big town.
Right.
But we've got some pretty big neighborhoods. So what have you been hearing and seeing out on the trail, if you will?
People are scared of population growth, and it's a little blurry because the school district map, if you will, is so much larger than our city map.
Right.
And so you've got neighborhoods, you've got other towns coming into Argyle that are in our schools, and as a town, there's nothing we can do about it. We have to be very intelligent about the way we allow our town to grow. And I think that's probably the biggest concern. A small town, probably more so than a big one. A few people, very few number of people can spread a few things through the town that are absolute deceit, really. There's no truth to it, but it scares people to death, and we've had some of that happening in this election. And so, you want to get out there and just say, hey, go vote for me, and here's all the reasons why, but you do have to be a little bit on the defense. Our town even had to be on the defense a little bit. Because we are not, the developer story for us, we are actively looking for good commercial partners. And that's great tax dollar, and it's not so many more rooftops.
Well, and that's with this bond. Part of our bond capacity is based on that so much is paid for through our property taxes because we don't have the commercial development.
That's right.
So we want good, smart commercial development. And so these are all the things that if you have elected officials, whether on the school board or on the town council, who are engaged because of their children.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, we've talked about it with state races, with the lieutenant governor. That's one of the reasons why we've been holding our feet to the fire in the lieutenant governor's race, and I feel strongly that David Dewhurst, and let me preface this real quick that Women on the Wall does not endorse, so this is my own personal endorsement. Got to cover all the legal things. But that he's willing to look at the issues and fight like a dad.
Yeah.
I want elected officials that fight like a dad.
And that's a good point. You know, there are some great town council people on right now. However, I am the only one on council who has children in the district. You know?
That's huge.
And it is huge. You know, you have to embrace the school district. And quite frankly, Argyle is what it is because of this amazing school district that we have.
Right.
It's why we came, it's why we bought land 11 years ago without even having children yet, you know, in the hopes that we could move to Argyle by the time we had kids.
And that makes a huge difference.
It
You
does.
have a vested
It does.
interest in
And
it.
we're surrounded by families who are so involved
Right.
on every level. But, you know, again, there's these little opportunities for government to move in. And one of the things that scares me to death are the kids all having iPads and how the government can keep up with all.
The data collection.
Yes.
It's a huge, huge issue.
It's the string attached.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and there was a story that came out this morning, and Rick, you may not have heard this story. Our good friend Meryl Hope, who writes for Breitbart, Texas, who moved to Texas from California to escape the Common Core, and gets to Texas and realizes, oh my gosh, it's here. So Texas schools apply Common Core through YouTube. So in this bond package that we have, because I'm really torn, because I'm not totally against the bond package, because we need a middle school.
Right.
We don't have a middle school.
It's space.
It's space,
Yeah.
and the growth is coming. So
Right.
I'm not totally closed to the bond, but when we have $2 million in the bond for technology, and part of that is to buy laptop computers, and by the way, that we're financing for 30 years that will be obsolete in a year.
That's right. That's right.
And that came out on our conference call last night. Our friend Matt Armstrong from Frisco was telling us, and I was like, what are we doing with this? But look at this. YouTube, and I want people to go to Breitbart, Texas, and read this article book, but there's 850,000 channels created by more than 1,000 partners from around the world. And the YouTube spokesman named some of these where they're partnering to teach American history and all of these classes through YouTube. Well, when you start looking at the American history on these YouTube classes, they offered American history, Bush's first term, Enron, No Child Left Behind, Bush, and then they talk about Katrina, the Iraq surge, the mortgage mess, the cyber boxed set precedent, where they're blaming Bush that because Bush gave way to the Great Recession and a sudden siege into the history of slavery in America, women's suffrage movement, and the stopover with Hillary Clinton that ended with the election of Barack Obama. That's their American history. And then you hear the YouTube videos that are read-along about President Obama, and the titles are a little nicer. Give America a raise, raise the minimum wage, and restoring opportunity for all. They're using technology. What they're creating and what they call it is digital citizens. And so
and it's created history. It's not
right.
It's not opinion history. It's not factual history. You know, don't spoon feed
fabricated history.
Fabricated history.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
Can I bring y'all's attention to something that's really, I think, unique?
Yes.
Most people cannot wrap their arms around the truth because the truth is moving so fast and it's distorted by the non-truths that they can't see the forest for the trees. Go back to 1963. and look online at the American Communist Party's 45 goals and read number 17. Okay? Just do that. And number 17 says, can you put that up on the screen? Can you do it today? Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations. Put Communist Party line in textbooks. This is in the congressional record of the United States of America. If you don't believe it's so, why are we seeing it now? And it was said in 1963. Actually, it was said before then. But that's the first congressional record of the 45 goals of the Communist Party. It's interesting to read the rest of them, and you see how this fits in. And so they said they would do it. They implemented a plan. Here it is. The proof's in the pudding. It's happening. And so they said it was going to happen. It's happening. It's been implemented. It continues to implement itself through other channels, change its name, because we keep averting it.
Right. Right.
And they move around and they come around us.
Rebrand. They're on to us.
And,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so the Attorney General said no, right? And it's a conflict for Thomas Ratliff to be where he is, okay? And so we start putting all these dots together, and we look at Bill Bennett and Thomas Ratliff and C-Scope and Common Core, and now Fox News has a huge ad about Common Core. If y'all not seen it, I hope you have, because it is well done. All of these people saying Common Core is not a bad thing, those people are all wrong. And so there is a lot of money being spent to subvert and pervert your children.
And, you know, and I don't know what year it was that, and you may know this, Rick, what year it was that the bombing took place.
Weather Underground?
With Weather
Okay,
Underground.
1972 and 3.
Okay.
And you had the Students for a Democratic Society along with that, going along with some of the things that Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn,
Right.
Charlie Rudd, and all of that group were creating. And in a meeting at that time, right after the bombing, an FBI undercover agent, you can see that online, it's now online until they remove it. An undercover FBI agent is in the meeting where they say, quote, we need to kill 25 million Americans to affect the change that we need to have. Now, who would that 25 million people be? Let me give you a hint. WW2. And all those babies that were born when those men came home to their wives. It's a natural progression. And those baby boomers, well, you're looking at one right across the hall from you here. They are people in my age group, people in my generation. And what do we believe in? Freedom, liberty,
Freedom.
That's right.
Constitution, yada, yada, God-given rights. And who do they have to get rid of if they're going to change the narrative for those that are coming after us? We have to get rid of all the documentation, don't we? We can't have anything laying around that they can read. Have you not heard of the communists in all of these countries, all of our lives, burning books, burning Bibles? These people don't believe in God.
No.
I rest my case. Back to you.
Well, and that is the dot to connect, because our generation, unless we get engaged and start looking at who these people are, we don't know who Bill Ayers is.
Right.
Most people don't know who Bill Ayers is. And so those of us in the grassroots movement who have been, when I go to a grassroots Tea Party meeting, generally the demographics is 60 and older. And everybody knows. Everybody knows who these people are. Our generation, we're working, trying to keep our head above waters. We haven't been educated on this history. Bill Ayers, who Mary spoke about at the very beginning of the show today, who did she mention? Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers, after the bombing, when they saw that they couldn't take down our nation through violent means, they all went into academia. And that's who's teaching our teachers in schools today.
Number 17.
Number 17.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
what they're doing.
Right.
And when I went to Region 11 Service Center to have a meeting with a great group of grassroots moms, actually grandparents, we went into this meeting with Dr. Stillman, and I asked, did Linda Darling Hammond write C-Scope? Because Linda Darling Hammond is very good friends with Bill Ayers. And the curriculum director told me, no, you don't understand. C-Scope was written for Texas teachers, by Texas teachers, but they use Linda Darling Hammond's philosophy of education. And I said, and you're okay with that? Because I've seen video and read books by Linda Darling Hammond where she believes in equalizing America and the world through education. But these people just don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
That's right.
And so we need to start listening to the generation before us who understand what's happening. Because if we don't, our children are the ones that are going to suffer the consequences.
And what are we doing?
And what are we doing?
We want to become the people who say, I know that I know I know. I know that I know I know. And we need more people who can get in that category through people like you and Women on the Wall and other movements in this nation. And God bless you. Y'all are doing an extremely good job. It is overwhelming how good it is. But everybody can't do the same thing. So we need a bunch of people like you doing individual projects, attacking the 45 goals of the Communist Party, or if you will, the Progressive Party. Hillary Clinton says, what? I'm a progressive. She has admitted to you that she is a communist. End of story. Don't take my word for it. Take somebody else's word for it that you believe in. Ask God. Read the Bible. Ask God.
Well, and Bill Ayers, there's a video of him talking to a grassroots community organizers, and he said, listen, we are not going to depend on Obama to fundamentally transform our nation. We have to do it ourselves. And he said, don't try to reach the seats of power that you don't have access to. Reach the seats of power that you have direct access to. Town council, mayors, school boards. So how do we fight back? Town council, mayors, school boards. And that's why I'm so excited that in our little town of Argyle, we can be the example of a community that comes together and works together, that our town council understands the big picture, that our school board understands the big picture and is willing to speak truth to power and fortify our community. Because if we do it in Argyle, they'll do it in Sanger, they'll do it in Flower Mound, they'll do it in Arlington, and it gets bigger and bigger. So that's why I'm so excited about you and Craig, because Marla's running for town council, her husband's running for school board, and we have an opportunity. I had another school board candidate call me, and he said, well, what's the solution? How do we fight back? And I said, it's us. We're the solution. And I said, you running for running for school board is the solution.
And it's one step at a time.
It's one step.
You know, it doesn't happen overnight, but it's got to start.
Beware of strangers bearing gifts, because there's other organizations out there that disguise themselves and say that we're doing the same thing, and what they're doing is they're undoing what you're doing.
That's right.
Exactly.
So you got to find purity, and truth, and honor, and character. I have an idea, and I've expressed this to a couple of legislators. And I'm getting some feedback, positive feedback on this issue. Stop giving the money to the schools that will not comply. Hold the money.
Right.
Right.
Because you got to follow the money. When you follow the money, you have to take it away. And when you take it away, they perk their ears up to you.
Right.
And I know that is a monumental task to even indulge in that conversation because it represents votes.
Right.
Their life's
does.
the problem. Are you willing to give up what you got to do the right thing? That's the bottom line. And don't give them the money, and they'll come. Believe me.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Well, we are going to close out the show, and I want to say thank you for coming today, and we'll have to get Craig in studio sometime. And after the election, that's the beauty of WBTM radio, that we're so thankful to Rick Rose, to Mel Moss, to Josh, for allowing us to come into the studio and to create content so that we can take this out. And so we're going to edit this video because we had some YouTube issues, which is another reason why we shouldn't be depending on YouTube to teach our children in the classroom. And we're going to get this video out. And the call to action is to share this video with your friends and neighbors and let your friends and neighbors know that people running for your local town council, these elections matter. It's actually these elections that will save us. Do you have a final words?
Yeah, just go vote. I mean, educate yourself on, the nice thing in small towns, there's not that many people running. It's not difficult to educate yourself on who your candidates are and how will they really serve you over the next 2 years. Is it a power trip for them, or is it truly an act of service?
Right.
Great point. Let me throw something in here real quick because I want you to understand where I'm coming from. I want people to follow up and say, I like what Women on the Wall is doing. And no different than Channel 13. We depend upon your funds, your donations to keep this thing running. Find Women on the Wall on the internet and donate something. 1,000 of you out there listening today donate $5. Okay, just 1,000 of you donate $5, or 2,000 of you donate $2.50. Okay. Volume works.
That's right.
Duplication works. Find a friend and tell him to duplicate what you've done. Give these people $5. And let's not forget to thank Arlington Tea Party.
Yes.
They put the money in this thing, and we, God bless them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick. And everybody, we'll be back same time, same place next week. Have a great week. Bye-bye.